We are all living in the midst of a revolution. The rapid and unrelenting convergence of media, entertainment, and technology is causing an incessant proliferation of digital distribution platforms and information products, and an insatiable lust for individual imagination and collaborative creativity. Aside from irrevocably changing the way we live and communicate as consumers, this revolution is creating a new class of young, wealthy innovators. The question is, how do we better build and diversify this new class of people? That's what this program, The Digital Genius, is all about. The very people who are at the center of this revolution are joining us here in our studio, imparting knowledge and insight into the world of media, entertainment, and technology. What's more, our guest, or our digital genius, if you will hear ideas and questions from some of the young, diverse minds that are budding with brilliance and destined to help lead this revolution. Joining us today is Strauss Zelnick, the Chairman and Chief Executive Officer of Take-Two Interactive, the developer of some of the biggest hits in video game entertainment, including the popular Grand Theft Auto series and the NBA 2K titles. That's only a small fraction of what Strauss Zelnick has done. He knows much about media and entertainment, and we are fortunate to have him here on the campus of Hampton University and inside the studios of the Scripps Howard School of Journalism and Communications. I'm Brett Pulley, Dean of the Scripps Howard School. Welcome to The Digital Genius. Strauss, thank you for being here.
Pleasure, thanks for having me.
So before we talk about Take-Two Interactive and Zelnick Media, let's talk a little bit about how you got to this point. Raised in South Orange, New Jersey, which is a place I know very well, the place where I also raised my kids. And you attend Wesleyan University as an undergrad, and you have a JD. You attend Harvard Law School and receive an MBA from Harvard.
Right.
And then the entertainment industry. How did that happen after Harvard?
Well, I always wanted to be in the entertainment business. It's been a lifelong dream to that point, and there's no natural route in. Only a couple of companies recruited at Harvard Business School, and they recruited for low-paying training programs. So, and I didn't know anyone in the business. So I just tried to make whatever connection I could, and my dad met a guy on a plane named Michael Benahum, who was making movies in those days, and he imposed on Michael to meet me, and Michael met me, and he was a very generous and warm and helpful man, and he sort of made it his mission to get me a summer job after my first year at grad school, and I ended up getting a job at Viacom in the business affairs department. And I did a good job, things went well, and that led to other connections and relationships, and that's how I got recruited at Columbia Pictures, which was my first job out of grad school.
But then before we know it, you are the president and chief operating officer at 20th Century Fox, right? This is after Rupert Murdoch had purchased the company?
Right, I worked for Rupert for 4 years.
Right, and in that job, how did you make that transition to such a major job in entertainment? Well,
the entertainment business is a real meritocracy, as you know. It's very difficult to break in, and because it is so difficult to break in, there isn't a whole group of constant new recruits with whom you're competing. So it's not like going to an investment bank or a major law firm where they regularly recruit 50 or 100 or 200 people and train them, and then it's highly competitive in the crew. It is so difficult to break in the first place that once you're a warm body in a seat, if you do a good job, if you work hard, you can get opportunities pretty quickly. So the very thing that makes it difficult to get in the first place, I think it makes it oddly somewhat easier to succeed when you're in place.
Yes.
I think it was perhaps true of your experience as well.
Sure.
And I kind of had the presence of mind to know that. So when I was graduating from law and business school, a traditional path would have been to go to a firm like Goldman Sachs, and Goldman recruited me. I was honest with myself that if I'd gone to Goldman, given my competent but not super competent math skills, I probably would have felt about mid-pack. I thought, well, you know, I'm really passionate about the entertainment business. Maybe I have some talents there. And that isn't a business that's known for professional management. It's not a business that recruits a lot of people who have these educational backgrounds. Maybe I'd have a competitive advantage, and that's exactly how it worked out.
Yeah.
So it was very difficult to get in the first place, but having gotten in, it's not as though it was easy to get ahead, but certainly easier to move ahead more quickly than in a regimented field like investment banking.
Sure, and we've talked earlier about some of your classmates at Harvard Business School who ultimately did pretty well on the street and in financial services. But you make a great point about the entertainment industry and the relative lack of people like yourself who really come from this high level of executive training. And I think that's that's really the point at which you and I met. You and I met when you were at BMG Entertainment, right? When BMG was still held by the big German company, Bertelsmann, and was certainly one of the biggest music companies. I guess those assets eventually became Sony.
That's right, they're now owned by Sony.
Music.
It was a joint venture and Sony now bought the whole thing.
Right. But I can remember, I mean, you as an executive, there were some battles, right? I can remember you battling with Clive Calder, who had Jive Records, and that time had Britney Spears, one of the hottest pop stars in the country, had NSYNC, which is where Justin Timberlake came from.
Backstreet Boys.
Backstreet Boys. Yeah. You battled with them, and then of course Clive Davis, who many people consider the greatest ears in music, and he managed the careers of people like Whitney Houston and Aretha Franklin and Carlos Santana and Barry Manilow, et cetera, et cetera. And here you are running that business, and you, as I said, had some heated times. What was that industry like during those days, and how has it changed today?
Well, it was, I was lucky to be there in the glory days. You know, the CD boom was still continuing. Digital distribution was just on the horizon. It was a threat, but it was an early threat. It seemed to us and to me to be really more of an opportunity than a threat. And had it been managed more effectively, probably would have been more of an opportunity. But those were the glory days of the music business. So, you know, I was there. I was in the business from late '94 till the end of 2000. And I don't know that there could have been a better time. Remember, I came to it with no experience.
Yes.
So I walked in as chief executive of one of the largest music companies in the world, and I had no music experience to speak of. I'd had a small record label at Fox, but I had motion picture and television, video game experience, home entertainment experience, not recorded music experience. And it was the first time I was CEO. Before that, I'd been a president and COO. So it was quite challenging, and I was young. I was 35 years old when I took over the company. Or something like that. So how did I handle it? I don't know. I guess I had the presence of mind at that point to know what I didn't know. I spent the first 6 months just learning the lay of the land, and then did the very best I could with what we had to offer, and it went very well. RCA went from losing money for 20 years in a row to becoming one of the leading rock and roll labels. We became #1 in rap and hip hop, #1 in country music, and #1 in pop music. We swept the Grammy Awards, and we delivered record revenues and record profits for the company for the entire time, 5 out of the 6 years that I was there.
It's pretty awesome.
So it was good. In terms of the battles, you know, they weren't battles from my point of view. I mean, I was the boss. So
you replaced Clive Davis with L.A. Reid, right?
I did.
You put L.A. Reid and Clive Davis, and I'm sure many of our students.
So he saw that as a battle. I saw it as a decision. I guess it's all in the eye of the beholder.
That's right.
By the way,
trained executive.
By the way, it worked out just fine for Clive. You know, Clive leaving Arista caused him to form J Records, which he sold back to Bertelsmann well after I left for a very big profit. And then, of course, he went to work at Sony as chief creative officer, and he had a storied career at Sony. And I've always had the greatest admiration for Clive. I'm friends with him to this day. Yeah. And I actually didn't battle with him. His contract had expired, and we put L.A. Reid in the job, but he was not replaced. We just didn't renew his agreement. It definitely did turn into a very ugly press situation, but it was a decision that had been made, and I knew it would be contentious, and I didn't put my own ego into the situation, and I knew it wasn't about me, and he was very well known. I was not well known. I mean, in fairness, he was very good with PR. He tried to make it a cause célèbre, but it's pretty hard to make something a cause célèbre when the person on the other side of the table is unknown and no one cares about him.
That's where we came into play. We helped make you known.
That is.
And in fact, J Records, which Clive formed after that, was as I recall, I don't know if they still have the deal with American Idol, but they had that deal, the winner of American Idol.
J Records was bought ultimately by Bertelsmann. It's all been folded in now. But yeah, listen, Clive's immensely talented.
Yes.
And Bertelsmann was very focused on age, and in my opinion, incorrectly. And I do think L.A. Reid was and remains an immensely talented executive. And I do think that he deserved a shot, and I'm proud that I was part of making sure he got a shot. But I was also the person who made the deal for Jay to stay with the Bertelsmann family.
Yes.
So I was not unmindful of Clive's talent. I do think that the most talented of us owe it to ourselves to move to the next stage when it's time. And again, I really did Clive a favor.
Yes.
He did way better forming Jay than he would have done staying at Arista. He'd already built Arista.
He did pretty well. So Zelnick Media. So tell us, what is Zelnick Media? What kinds of things have you guys been investing in?
Well, we're an investment and management firm that focuses on the media and communications industries. We raise private equity funds, and then we use those funds to buy and build enterprises in the media and communications space. And our interests span television. We have had recorded music. We currently don't. Service businesses that serve the media and communications business, mobile software and services, television production, and digital networks. So an array of businesses. What they tend to have in common is they tend to track the theme of digital technology transforming the media business.
Mm-hmm. So you guys have this private equity money, and this opportunity with Take-Two Interactive comes about. How did that happen? How did you ultimately end up running Take-Two Interactive?
Well, actually, we took over Take-Two in 2007, which was before we'd raised our first private equity fund. Until between 2001 and 2007, we were financing our deals on a one-off basis. So we'd find a company we found interesting, and then we'd talk to financiers about arranging the capital for us to buy and build the companies. It wasn't until 2008 that we created our own pool of capital, and now in 2014 we've created a second pool of capital, and we will continue to do that. So in 2007 we saw this company, Take-Two Interactive. I knew well because I'd been responsible for founding BMG Interactive, and then the chief executive of Bertelsmann, the parent, forced me actually to divest that business. Which I did, and when I divested, I sold it to a company that was called Take-Two Interactive.
Gotcha.
So a lot of people who'd worked for me at BMG Interactive now worked at Take-Two Interactive, and so that was some symmetry, although that was unintentional. It wasn't like I'd maintained in my head the notion that I got to go back and buy Take-Two someday. Take-Two was a public company. It was not performing well, to say the least. Its chairman had been indicted for backdating stock options. Its CFO was under investigation by the SEC. The company was under investigation by the SEC, the IRS, and the New York DA's office. They had not filed financial statements for 13 months. They hadn't had an annual meeting. They were losing money. They were running out of cash. So the company was very, very troubled. And one of the things that we do is we do turnarounds.
Right.
So we saw this situation, and we embarked on a quiet program to convince the leading shareholders to vote current management out and vote us in. And that's exactly what we did. So we noticed the board that we would attend the annual meeting and call for a floor vote. It was essentially like, like a student government election. We did not file a proxy. It was not a proxy fight because that was too costly. This company had very unusual bylaws that allowed shareholders to put a measure on the ballot. We put this measure on the ballot, and we were supported by enough shareholders that we won the vote with 88% of the vote. Oh, wow. So on a Thursday, I had no shares of the company. I was not a shareholder. I couldn't really be a shareholder because I was talking to 9 leading shareholders. And under SEC rules, you can solicit up to 10 shareholders without filing a proxy. So we had a limit. We could talk to 10, and we did, but one didn't want to talk to us. So we were supported by 9 major shareholders representing about 40% of the company. They were also not allowed to publicize this, so we couldn't, but there were some newspaper and magazine and online articles about what we were up to, and we won with 88% of the vote. So on a Thursday, I owned no shares of the company. On the Friday, Zelnick Media became the external manager of the company. I became the chairman. My partner, Ben Fetter, became the chief executive, and we've been managing the business ever since.
And so now today, Take-Two Interactive has about 5% of the outstanding equity.
Zelnick Media owns about
Zelnick
5%
Media.
of Take-Two
Right,
Interactive,
Take-Two Interactive.
And we have an external management agreement that goes for a number of years, and I'm now the chairman and chief executive.
And now, after taking a distressed company and turning it around, you guys have about $2 billion a year in annual revenue. So
Well, all of Zelnick Media companies together is almost $3 billion.
Right.
Because Take-Two Interactive last year was $2.5 billion. This year it looks to be about $1.4 billion or $1.5 billion.
And everyone knows now, I know you guys have a number of hits, and I'll ask you, I wanted you to talk about that. But certainly, one of the most well-known hits and one of the things that's behind a lot of that revenue is certainly the Grand Theft Auto series, right? You guys have kind of broken all records in the industry. Grand Theft Auto 5, which came out maybe a little over a year ago, has
Right.
sold almost 35 million copies.
Yeah, 34 million units, yeah.
Right, extraordinary. And of course, as many people also know, Grand Theft Auto has been the subject of controversy for its content, its racy content. How have you managed your way through that? It seems that you guys have overcome that with aplomb. How have you done that?
Well, it was very challenging initially. The company had really stumbled in terms of its the way it handled criticism of its content, but I'm used to that because I was in the movie business and I made edgy movies, and I was in the record business, and we were the #1 rap and hip hop label, and I was criticized very publicly for that, usually in an election year. And so I was accustomed to a company being in the crosshairs because of its content. Look, you know, the First Amendment protects one's ability to do whatever you want, frankly, with regard to speech in America, as it well should. I think the reason that I personally, with all my enterprises, have never had a problem with content is because I don't rely on the First Amendment. The First Amendment is the backdrop. One needs to take responsibility for what one does, and what I say is, look, we're not just a business enterprise, we're a creative enterprise. We don't just make commerce, we make art. And we need to treat that with sensitivity and recognize that while we don't create behavior, we play an important role in the vernacular. We play a role in the social dialogue. And if we want to make hits, then we also have responsibility along with those hits. And that responsibility starts with labeling your products appropriately and marketing to the appropriate audience. So if you're making a mature rated product, make sure it says that. Make sure you only market to adults, as in Grand Theft Auto is a mature rated product. And then more importantly, understand that you form a part of the social dialogue. When we put out Dirty Dancing, it was the first picture I greenlit, you know, suddenly young women everywhere were dressing like Jennifer Grey, and the soundtrack to Dirty Dancing became the biggest selling soundtrack of all time for many, many years. We influence the discourse, and I take that responsibility seriously. I enjoy the benefits of it because hits benefit my companies and therefore me, and I take responsibility as well. What I do say is, look, in that context, I have to look at our content as art. I have to be comfortable with what we put out. We have to market it appropriately. And then having made those decisions singularly as the head of the enterprise, I will stand behind them. And because I've always stood behind my creators and I've always taken that point of view, I've always chosen carefully, you can't really criticize that approach. The worst you can say is, I don't like your taste. You know, so once we took that approach, you know, we put out a title when we first took over Take-Two. We put out a title called Manhunt 2, and it's a pretty rough title, marketed to adults. It was a horror title, and there's one scene in the game where, you know, you can actually rip a character's spine out and beat him up with his spine. That's relatively rough.
Yeah, it's a little violent.
It's pretty violent. It's also intended to be, you know, amusing. It's a horror title. It's animated. No one thinks it's real. We know that's not real. And we were criticized a little bit for it, and I was like, I stand behind it. Well, once you say that as a chief executive, I wasn't embarrassed behind it. I've seen it. It's art. It may not be for you, but it's art. Yes. It's hard to criticize it. Equally, I was testifying in front of Congress during the heyday of the hip-hop and rap revolution. And Senator McCain took out a lyric sheet and said, "Mr. Zelnick, will you read these lyrics?" And I said, "Well, first of all, those are Warner Brothers lyrics, so no."
I won't read those.
Secondly, I said, "Look, those lyrics were not intended to be read in the halls of Congress. That's not how rap and hip hop music was meant to be consumed. And you've got it wrong. This isn't how it was meant to be consumed." But if you're asking me about my lyrics, no, I wouldn't read them here. They weren't meant to be read here. But they are art, they're poetry, I stand behind them.
Yes. So Grand Theft Auto, I mentioned the 34, 35 million units of Grand Theft Auto 5, but what about the entire franchise? You guys you have quite a franchise. Over 200, 250
Something
million
like that,
units?
yeah, a couple 100 million units.
Will we ever see a movie? Will we see other things as a result that are part of this franchise? It seems like it's ripe for expanding the franchise.
One of the things I'm proud of is that we really look. We're in business. Right? I couldn't do what I do if I'm not in business. I'm a capitalist, and I'm not embarrassed by it. But we are true to our products. We're true to our art. And we're not making Grand Theft Auto lunchboxes. Thank you very much. Might be able to make money making them, but we're not making them.
No Happy Meals.
No Happy Meals. We make interactive entertainment. We think we make the best interactive entertainment. Metacritic says we do. Consumers say we do. I'm not ruling out a line extension, but it's not clear to me that making a linear motion picture would benefit the work creatively. And if it didn't benefit the work creatively, it might hurt the work creatively. And we certainly wouldn't want that. We're also not in the movie business. So if we were to make a movie, we'd really be licensing someone else to make a movie, and the economics related to doing that aren't powerful enough. They're not compelling enough to make us take the risk of hurting our franchise. Again, I'm not ruling out that we would do it, but it's not of primary interest to us.
Right. Well, it seems like at least the last couple of weeks, it seems like Wall Street is turned on by what you guys are doing. Your shares have been up, I think probably 15 to 20%.
Right.
The last couple.
It's only
of
taken
weeks.
me 7 years to be an overnight success.
Right,
I'm a slow learner.
Patience is a virtue. But what's going on? What's behind that? Do you think that you think your company has been undervalued? I know you guys have recently, I think in the not too distant past, released Grand Theft Auto Online.
Yep, about a year ago as well. That's done great. Part of it is we had the 9th consecutive quarter where we beat our guidance, and we once again increased our guidance for the year. I think that was part of it. Part of it is the market's doing very well. We're just setting record highs right now as a market. Part of it is that our outlook for the year is quite strong in a year when we don't have a new Grand Theft Auto release. We're bringing Grand Theft Auto 5 to next-gen platforms, but it's not new. Part of it is Jim Cramer keeps saying nice things about us. Thank you, Mr. Cramer.
Yes.
So I think it's a whole collection of factors. Do I think we're undervalued? I defy you to find a CEO who does not say that his or her stock is undervalued. So
no matter what the market
no matter what the market cap is. But I think the value is in the eye of the beholder and in the eye of the market. I don't argue with the market. I do think that if you look at, there are 3 top interactive entertainment companies today. That's new for us to be in the top 3, but we are. Activision, Electronic Arts, and ourselves. Sure. And if you look at their valuation and their metrics versus our valuation and our metrics, either their valuation's too high or ours is too low, but they can't coexist properly in the same market. So something's got to give.
Right.
And of course, I'm more inclined to say that ours is too low than that theirs is too high. Those are 2 great companies that are
Sure.
doing very well.
Yeah, they're trading at a much higher multiple.
They are. They're much higher multiples. And I think the reason is that they are perceived to be companies that have delivered more predictably and more regularly than Take-Two has, and for a long time that was true, but we have diversified this company, we have cut the costs, we've doubled the revenues organically, apples to apples since 2007. We have the top franchises in the business, the biggest collection of powerful owned intellectual property. We made a bunch of money last year, we're projecting to make money this year. I think the market's beginning to take notice. That's my sense, but that's just in the eye of in my eyes.
So Grand Theft Auto 6, this is the time. When will we see it? This is the time to tell.
This is the time to tell.
Yes.
We never ever talk about upcoming releases in conversations like these. We let our labels do that.
That'll move the market, won't it?
If I were willing to talk about it, it would. I think one of the things that we're proud of is that we don't ever try to move the market. And I've been criticized for that. I've been criticized for not being more of a promoter. But I've been at the entertainment business and the communications business for the better part of 30 years. I've never lost money and I've never failed to make money. But sometimes it takes me a while. You know, I had a career that seemed like it looked a very steep trajectory for a very short amount of time, and since then I've been very much the tortoise, not the hare. And it works out. You know, I think I'm in the business of hitting singles and doubles and occasionally triples. I don't try to hit a grand slam home run, and I try really hard not to lose money. So I'm the wrong guy to pump a security. You know, I'm the wrong guy to paint a beautiful picture in the future. I'm the right guy to talk about something that we did working out okay, or if need be, not working out okay, and then dusting myself off and trying to do a better job the next time. And I do believe that the best leaders over time are not the flashy leaders pointing to the next big invention. I think the best leaders are the ones who hunker down with their teams and try to do a great job, and then try to do it consistently over and over and over again, and aren't too busy shouting from the rooftops and trying to make noise about it.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about opportunity in media and tech industries. If you could work for any other media and technology company today other than your own, which one would it be?
That's such a great question. It's been so long since I've thought about that. I guess it depends age and stage. I mean, at my age, it's not a super interesting question. If I were starting out, I think I'd be interested in working at a company like Facebook or even Google, although it's a very big company, because the enormous market power those companies have and the innovations that they're creating, particularly Facebook. I think they're very innovative. But Google, they're prepared to think out of the box, and they just make so much money. They can really take a lot of risk. I think GE remains a really good company. Cisco is a really good company. I think there's wonderful opportunity at Time Warner still as they continue to think about what kind of company they are in the future. CBS is turning out to be a really interesting company. From the point of view of someone like me, that's hard to say. If I didn't work for myself, I'd probably have to decide between going to something really tiny and trying to build it, or going something really huge and trying to turn it around. But I'd be the last person to go to something really huge that's going really well and try to run it, because I don't think there's much of an interesting game in there. I mean, the last thing I would have wanted to do is what Jeff Immelt did. You know, who'd ever want to follow Jack Welch and never want to follow Jamie Dimon? So if I were going to go to a big company, it would be some big, horrible, challenged company that everyone thinks poorly of. If I were to go to a small company, I don't know. I'd have to find something really cool and really tiny that no one has ever heard of.
Well, let me ask you this: smaller companies, what do you think is the hottest new tech startup today? I mean, there's stuff out there. Uber,
there's so many.
Airbnb.
You know, there's so many wonderful little companies. We're involved with a few as an angel investor. I'm involved with a company called Lua, which is focused on mobile communications. I think it's a pretty interesting company. There's a big array, and I'm not sure I'm particularly good at calling the success of those companies. I like a mid-sized company called Shutterstock, which is public, John Oranger's company. That's a great company, and he's done a fantastic job. If I were to bet on sort of a billion-dollar-ish company being even more successful, I'd bet on John all day long.
Yeah. One more question before we break. What can media, entertainment, tech companies do to make their ranks more diverse?
Well, frankly, it's a shocking state of affairs in media and communications today. We are gender diverse. You know, there are a lot of female executives. That wasn't always the case. Particularly in Hollywood now, there are a lot of female creative executives, and there are female leaders in the business, more than one. We are not ethnically diverse at all as an industry, and I think that's a reflection of the fact that it's really hard to break in. It's really, really challenging to break in, and it is a meritocracy. So the business is looking for the best and the brightest, but there's no path to get inside. And so if you're the best and the brightest, and you're African American, and you're graduating from a good school with a good resume, you know, every traditional company on earth is dying to hire you in an effort to diversify. And now look at the entertainment business, where they don't recruit outwardly. You know, they only recruit inwardly. Yes. I don't think it's a business full of racists. I don't believe that for a minute. I think they're high-minded people. But I also think it's a very difficult business. At any given time, people are struggling for survival. And when you're struggling for survival, you don't tend to focus on things like, how can I be more diverse? That said, the effect of it is a shocking and wrong effect. That, you know, that in fact the walls are low for talent, right? There's a lot of talent diversity. The walls are high for executives.
Yes.
And that's wrong.
Yeah, and the thing about that is that perhaps survival would come a little easier if the ranks were more diverse, if the room was more diverse, if there were different ideas. That's always the part. It's like when times get tough, companies tend to circle the wagons, which may be the wrong thing to do. When we come back, we'll check in with some of our students as they pitch a new app idea to break those pesky mobile addictions. With over 1 billion people tweeting, blogging, and posting, digital is a huge platform for interaction and expression. Our student correspondent, Leslie Gooden, has more.
There's a lot going on in the world of digital media, so let's get to it. Microsoft and Dropbox have teamed up to allow users access to Office from Dropbox. The software giant is pushing out Dropbox-enabled Office apps for the iPhone and Android in the next few weeks, according to the Bloomberg Businessweek. Continuing with Microsoft, the good news keeps on rolling. The software company has also announced that it will take Microsoft Office free for its mobile users. In March, they required anyone who wanted to create or edit documents on their iPads to buy a $99 subscription to Office 365. This is a trending model for new software companies, especially according to mobile apps. The objective is to draw large numbers of people with basic services, then rely on a core group of users to pay for features that are used for more specific tasks. Moving on, what's new in technology? The popular shopping site Amazon unveils a new listening, talking, and music speaker for your home called Echo. Standing at just 9 inches tall, this speaker plays music and fills voice command. Echo costs $199, but customers have to apply for the device and will be distributed selectively. The company is moving with caution to ensure that the device voice command responds correctly. That's a quick wrap up for this evening in the world of digital media.
Thank you, Leslie. Next, we'll get our digital geniuses' opinion on our students' mobile app concept. Stay right where you are.
Ever had an addiction you didn't know about? Sounds odd, right? As computers turn into tablets and the tablets turn into mobile phones, our intellect is slowly burned out by the latest celebrity gossip, Twitter beef, and Instagram posts. Studies show the attention span of the average adult today is 1 second lower than that of a goldfish, which is why we are introducing the mobile application Nobot, nourishing our brains over time. Studies have shown it takes 21 days to form a habit, so the first 21 days will be used to break the habit you have already formed, and the next 21 days are used to reform a new habit. The Nobot app will be used over a course of 8 weeks. After you download the app, a short survey will be conducted to determine users' current digital consumption and mobile device usage. Once the results are determined, the app will create a unique plan to minimize the user's unhealthy mobile device usage. Nobot encourages you to decrease your mobile device usage as time goes on, prescribing up to 8 hours of disabled use.
By the end of this cleanse, you should be able to control your mobile device usage and instead enjoy the precious moments around you. Studies have revealed that the average person spends 90 minutes a day on their phone. That's 23 days in a year. Because of that, our target audience for this app is the millennial generation. Think about it. Those from the ages of 18 to 33 don't even know life without mobile apps and social media. These individuals look at their phone more than they look up at their teachers in class. They get mad when Instagram isn't working or they cannot connect to Wi-Fi at work. And that is why nobody's here to change this. We are not trying to eliminate technology as a whole. Nobody's here to promote the healthy and appropriate use of it. Thank you.
It's very well said, very well put together, and clever and also amusing. I think the couple questions I would have if someone were pitching me is, first, I'd be a little concerned that the very people who need the app most are the people who would want the app least. So that would trouble me. I guess I'd probably pose the question, how are you going to market this? How are you going to create a demand for it? That'd be the first thing. And the second thing would be, how are you going to monetize it? How are you going to pay it? Are you going to sell it in the App Store, which would be perfectly reasonable, or are you going to try to create a subscription? And you may want to think about tying the app into some other social media that reward people. So you may want to think about gamification, about prizes or rewards or badges, so that people feel like they're rewarded for doing certain things, which you didn't mention, but that would be a natural. But I think the biggest issue with this would be the demand for it. The truth is that, you know, I don't consider myself addicted to my mobile device, but I use it more than 90 minutes a day, and I'm regularly on it. And while you know, it might be nice to have an app in addition to my wife that reminds me not to do it too much, I'm not sure I'd want to participate in such a rigorous program. But it was clever and thoughtful and fun.
So earlier in the show, I spoke with Strauss Zelnick, the chairman and CEO of Take-Two Interactive. We've talked about one of their most amazing hits, Grand Theft Auto. We talked about how Strauss came up in the entertainment industry at BMG Entertainment, 20th Century Fox, and many of the things that he sees across the digital media horizon. Now we hear from the studio audience and those of you at home. Lesla has all the questions you've been posting on Twitter using the hashtag #DigitalGenius.
Thank you so much, Dean Pilley and Mr. Zelnick. You know, since you guys have been talking, I've been looking at a couple questions from our audience. The first one comes from a kid named Gino. He asked, what was the biggest challenge you faced since you become involved in the gaming industry?
Well, I'd say the biggest challenge that I faced was taking a company that had a lot of potential and turning it into a leading competitor. And we took any number of steps to do that. We reduced the costs of the enterprise.
We're going to start your answer again.
Sure.
Microphone problem. You say what? Start whenever you want. 5, 4.
I think the biggest challenge we faced in the interactive entertainment business was turning around and building up a company that had great potential that wasn't successful when we took it over, and that was Take-Two Interactive. And that involved meaningfully reducing its cost base and diversifying its product lineup. And the way we did that was to make sure to encourage our creative folks to pursue what they were passionate about and to do their very best work. And in response to that, since 2007, we've been able to put out one new, very significant hit every year. So it's worked out successfully, but that was very challenging.
Thank you. And this comes from @the Hype Easy. He asked, is it more rewarding to create a new gaming franchise, example the Borderlands, or developing a well-known one like GTA or 2K?
All of the above. We pride ourselves on making sequels of our well-known intellectual property, and yet every year we need to create a new hit. I'd say they're equally challenging, although trying to create awareness and demand for something brand new is a little more difficult than trying to do it for an existing franchise. But then consumer expectations for existing franchises are really high. So it's very rewarding to do both, and it's very challenging to do both. I'm not sure I see much of a difference.
Okay, this is the last one. This is from me personally. So with the gaming community becoming big, I'm a gamer myself, and I know there's been a lot of talk about a virtual world. I know we've seen it in the arcades, but can we expect something where we can sit at home, put a cap on, and actually be in like GTA, or I can be playing 2K with, I don't know, Kobe or something like that?
There's no question that virtual reality is on the near horizon. Sony is bringing us the Morpheus device. Facebook is bringing us Oculus Rift, and there are a number of other hardware and software innovations that create an innovative experience that is also an immersive experience where you're actually in the world itself. I've actually recently had a demonstration of the Morpheus technology, which was pretty amazing. It was a roller coaster ride, and you really felt like you were on a roller coaster. I like roller coasters. If you don't like roller coasters, you wouldn't want this demonstration. I think the question remains for those of you who play video games and will sit and play a video game for several hours, whether having something physically on your head that blocks out all other stimulus is going to be too much, is going to induce nausea, for example, maybe very solitary. And then there are sort of technical questions like how you control a controller when you have something that's blocking your field of view. So I don't think it's entirely clear that immersive devices that block out the rest of your field of vision will necessarily become the future of interactive entertainment. But if they are, we're quite happy about it. We create what we hope is the best software in the business for hardware devices. We don't create hardware devices. We don't vote on hardware devices. We're where the consumer is. So if that's what consumers want, we will give it to them, and there's no doubt in my mind that technology will enable that to happen. So I think a broader question that's also interesting is, what other uses for highly immersive devices will there be, whether those are medical uses or other communications uses? Because we will soon be in a situation where you can put on some device that blocks the rest of your field of vision, and you will feel very much like you're in a 3D environment that is real, but that actually isn't real, that's digital. And maybe that FaceTime becomes an altogether different experience in the future.
Silicon Valley's media and tech giants have been candid recently about the lack of diversity in their ranks. Racial diversity, especially in the case of African Americans, is nearly non-existent in the industry. At Google, where the workforce totals 46,000, only 2% are black. At Yahoo, there are 12,000 employees. Again, just 2% are black. eBay does a little better. Some 7% of its workers are black. However, when it comes to the higher paying tech jobs, again, black employees occupy just 2% of those positions. And so it goes from one media and tech company to the next. All while the customer base for these services is disproportionately comprised of black consumers. But let me be clear, the need to diversify in the industry has nothing to do with social welfare. If innovation and creativity is to flourish into the future, then these media, entertainment, and technology companies must be populated by people with diverse backgrounds, interests, and ideas about how the world works or should work. An Atlantic Monthly poll released this month asked 50 executives in Silicon Valley what they think is the biggest barrier to innovation in the United States. And 10% of them said that a lack of diversity was the number one thing hindering innovation. So before we close, I am very happy to report that our guest, Strauss Zelnick, came here to not only impart wisdom, he came to make a difference. He informed me today that Take-Two Interactive will provide paid internships in New York City next summer for Scripps Howard students. Thank you for that, Strauss.
Pleasure.
And thank you for joining us. It's great to see you.
Thanks for having me here.
Absolutely.
I really appreciate it.
It's our pleasure.